Hey everybody, it is Super Sunday, and today I had some cheese from Christmas cheese tray I wanted to use up, so I thought I would make a beer cheese soup. Sounds good. So it calls for 2.5 cups of chicken broth, 1 cup of heavy whipping cream, 2 carrots diced. That's the leftover cheese. It is Havarti, Gouda, and cheddar and some pepper jack. 1 large onion, 1/3 cup of flour, 1/4 cup of butter. There's a bay leaf. I always freeze this, but that is some orange bell pepper and green bell pepper. And it called for 2 to 3 celery stalks. Same thing, I freeze these. They freeze really well. It calls for 1 beer. I wouldn't recommend this beer for this soup. If you have a craft beer or a thicker beer, that'd be good, but I don't, and I'm not going to go to the store. So I'm going to use this light beer, and it'll be just fine. Liam Perrins calls for that. Salt, pepper, calls for a little cayenne, that said optional. Garlic, I'm going to use the minced garlic instead of the fresh, and some ground mustard. And that's all the ingredients. And I'm going to serve this with some frozen pretzels that I'm going to heat in the oven. That'll be absolutely delicious. So let's get cooking for my Super Sunday soup. So I put the 1/4 cup of butter in the pan. I'm going to melt it. Then I'm going to add my vegetables, my celery, my onions, and my carrots. I'm melting the 1/4 cup of butter, and I'm going to add the onions, the carrots, the peppers, and the celery, and I'm going to brown that. There's the carrots. Now, it doesn't really matter what size you chop these, because I'm going to use my immersion blender. But if you're not going to use the immersion blender, you probably want to chop them a little finer than what I did. But that's just kind of personal preference too. Add the onions. Gonna add the peppers. I'm gonna do this all one-handed. A little tricky. See all the veggies? It's always with soup. Soup always has tons of veggies in it, and you never really even notice. And there is the celery. Now I'm going to cook this all till it gets nice and soft. I am going to add my bay leaf and some garlic. Okay, I'm going to add the flour in. Since I'm using beer for this soup, I'm just going to add regular flour because beer has gluten in it anyway, so there's no point of trying to make it gluten-free. So, I have some leftovers my husband can have instead of the soup that he'll be very happy about. Now I'm going to cook this for about a minute. And then I'm going to start to add my chicken broth to it. Make sure to stir it really good so it doesn't stick to the bottom of your pan. I added the chicken broth. I really had to stir a lot, so I did not record it. But you can kind of see the consistency of the broth. Now I'm going to add some spices. So I'm going to add these spices. This is about 1 teaspoon of salt. It called for 2, but you can always add more later, and that just seemed like a lot to me. And then I did 1 teaspoon of pepper, 2 teaspoons of ground mustard, and about 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne. I'm going to pour those in. Now it calls for 1 tablespoon of Lea and Perrins. So I'm going to put that in. And I'm going to let that cook for a while. Probably about 5 minutes. And then I'll take the bay leaf out and use my immersion blender to make it smooth. That's funny, I forgot the most important part, the beer. So I'm going to add the beer now. There we go. Now I'm going to let it cook for 5 minutes. I needed to read this recipe closer. I also am supposed to add the cream. So another 1 cup of cream. I thought it looked thick, which is part of why I was reading the recipe. Alright, now we're going to cook it for 5 minutes. This is what I'm going to serve with the soup. These are soft-baked pretzels. They'd be good to dip in the soup, and I got these at the Dollar Tree. They're microwavable. Okay, I'm going to use my immersion blender. And I'm going to chop up all the veggies so it's nice and smooth. Hopefully you don't chop my cord up. So I'm done pureeing it, and this is what it looks like. It is not completely smooth like a cream or something. You can still taste little pieces of the vegetable, but it's amazing. You can really taste the beer in it. I was surprised that 1 beer gave it that much of a beer flavor. Now I'm going to add my hodgepodge of cheese in. So now I added my cheese, and I'm going to let it melt. And we'll see. I've never used this selection of cheese, but I wanted to use it up and not waste it. I could have froze it, but then I still would have had to figure out something to do with it. And this seemed like a good idea. So I'm going to melt this. Not too long, because if you melt cheese like this too long, it'll get kind of rubbery. Just until it's melted is what you want to do. Yum. The soup is done. You know it's done when the cheese isn't stringy anymore and everything's melted. That look good? I'm going to give it a taste test before I serve supper. Here is the soup and pretzel. I didn't heat the pretzel up, but I wanted you to see it. That box of pretzels comes with 6 of those. Anyway, that is Super Saturdays beer cheese soup with pretzel. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you next Sunday with another soup recipe.